value investing? I know, it's a delicate topic. The economy is facing so many conflicting forces today, and the markets are swinging around between wars and oil prices and climate change and AI and the Trump administration policies and the climate change impact on the environment and policy. I mean, it's nuts. And those of us trying to invest with impact and women, and it's all under attack, and immigrants under attack. I mean, what do we do? How do we make sense of all this? But there is a light at the end of the tunnel because there's this thing you might have heard me talk about called the Great Wealth Transfer underway. Have I piqued your curiosity? What is it, and what can we do to maximize this moment and make a difference? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with a master of these issues. So put on your earbuds or turn up the volume, grab a pen and pad or tablet to take notes, and let's get started. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We share stories, insights, tips, and advice from remarkably innovative women working on the front lines of energy, sustainability, climate, and corporate responsibility. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my articles as well. And please pass it on to your friends and leave us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It helps other people find us. And one more thing before we get started, if you are at an inflection point yourself looking for support with your ESG work or your career, please reach out to me. In all the chaos around us, there is also a lot of opportunity, and we don't want you to be flailing. Your talents are valuable. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn at Joan Michelson and let me know you're a listener. We can help you no matter what industry you're in. So, how do we invest so that we both make a difference and make money? Many investment advisors think you need to make money however you want, however you can, and then donate it to make a difference. I've had advisors tell me that too. But the Electric Ladies podcast audience wants to make money in ways that we're proud of too, right? That make a difference too. So, how do we do that? On top of that, women of all generations are in line to inherit trillions of dollars collectively. So, how can we manage and invest that money so we make a positive difference? I've written about this a bit and talked about it a bit, but I want to dive deeper into it. So, let's ask an expert. I'd like you to meet Jolyne Caruso, a veteran investment advisor, impact investor, and strategic advisor in general, who recently served as divisional vice chair of UBS Global Wealth Management and oversaw their family office consulting business with private wealth management. That's an elite group of wealth advisors who serve the firm's largest and most complex clients. She previously had her own impact investment firm, which I think is where I met her originally many years ago. Before you investing had have a label, and she's been helping advance women in leadership for many years. Jolyne has worked in global capital markets, alternative asset management, private wealth management, and served on numerous boards. It would take us a week to go through. But suffice it to say, she was chair of the board of Barnard College, chair of the board of Align Impact, and served on the Columbia University Campbell Center for Entrepreneurship. That gives you a clue. Jolyne earned her bachelor's degree, of course, at Barnard, and full disclosure, has been a longtime friend of mine. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jolyne Caruso to Electric Ladies Podcast. Welcome, Jolyne. Thank you for joining me.
I'm thrilled to be
Finally.
here, Joan. I am so happy we're finally doing this.
Oh, I appreciate it. So let's start with kind of 80,000 feet up. How do you see the financial sector investing or not today? In environmental, climate, clean energy stuff? Like what do you see and why?
Yeah, this is so just to take a giant step back, Joan, you know that I don't have the experience that you have in environment and climate, but as a general impact investor, what heartens me about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how families are embracing them in particular. And I really do want to focus on family office capital here, only because they are the change makers in so many ways in our world as it's going to evolve over the next couple of years. So while we have development banks and non-government organizations and other institutional capital with commitments and goals toward sustainable and impact investing. I just think families now are the ones that you really have to watch as they amass. I just sidebar 1 second, I watch SpaceX now, potentially going IPO. And I just said to my husband when I read that yesterday, oh my goodness, there are going to be so many. We have 3,200 billionaires in the world today. It's going to go up geometrically after SpaceX because everyone has been investing. But imagine when all this capital gets harnessed, or a lot of it for good, and we'll talk about that. But specifically as it relates to climate, what I want to say is this is perfect for families. And when you look at where families invest across the spectrum of sustainable and impact investing, climate is really at the forefront. Like they think about that because look at our environment, look at the food supply, look at our soil. Every day on the internet, you read about the 10 toxic fruits and vegetables that we can no longer eat, coffee going away because of environmental, issues, notwithstanding the tariffs too. So I just want to say that I think when we look at climate, these are longer time horizons. These are issues that have to be segmented, and families are doing the work and they're putting their capital in. The flip side of this is the returns have been very mixed in this sector, as you know. But one of the things I hope we're going to talk about is that families really are more and more values aligning their investments. And there's a blurring line between philanthropy, catalytic investing that they can do into funds that invest in climate and do things, and all their active portfolios. So I feel like this is just going to increase over time in a pretty
Oh, that's
significant way.
yeah, no, that's all really, really helpful. And it's interesting. We can talk lots to unpack there for sure. Do you see where do you see women putting their money? Do you see it? Is that part of, I mean, you're focused on family offices, and I get that, but women specifically, you and I have both been, focused forever and a day on women in particular. So, and women have been amassing more of their own capital, right? Earning more, investing more. But so where do you see women putting their money today?
So this is a topic that is increasingly being studied. I know my former firm UBS has done a lot with women in wealth. There's been a lot of studies. Even the World Economic Forum has put out studies on this. Women do invest differently, and we're seeing it.
Hmm.
What I see is more and more of my daughter's age, 30s and up, and younger women are putting money into venture capital, into other women-owned businesses. I see a lot. The resurgence, or really the popularity of angel investing forums. We've seen a lot of this over the last like 8, 10 years. When I go to Golden Seeds meetings, there's mostly women around the table. So women are putting more and more money into private markets, into venture capital. Now, we only control 32% of global wealth, so it's not like we have half of global wealth to be able to allocate. But as women get more and more educated, Joan, we're going to see more money there. The second bucket is impact and ESG investing. I know this for a fact, having been involved in many family meetings. The next generation, especially the women, are pushing their fathers, their family office CIOs to really think more closely about investing in things like climate, gender lens investing, values alignment. It's sort of the defining characteristic of women and next gens who are these inheritors. So that's going to be really important. The third thing I would say is long-term patient capital. They're finding in all these studies that women are not the trigger, you know, chasing returns and trading. Women don't have that. And I don't want to make a generalization because there are many incredible women traders that move a lot of money around. But Schwab did this study last year. 6 in 10 women are comfortable taking investment risk when it aligns with their goals, and many of
Hmm.
them cite patience and discipline as core strengths. So that's to me really hopeful in how women will invest and maybe how the markets will evolve when you think about that. And I would say the other thing, and I just touched on it 5 minutes ago or 3 minutes ago, it's not only pure returns that they're worried about.
Mhm.
This is not just invest and make as much money as you can. It's sort of how does this align my investment portfolio, align with my philanthropy, align with my family values? And while I definitely want to make money, I definitely want to make money, I don't want to only make money at the expense of my values.
Thank you. That's all really, really good. It sounds to me like what you're saying is the definitions of risk and reward for women are different.
Exactly.
That reward is as much values alignment as it is dollar amount, that it's not make the absolute most amount you can make with any given dollar, but that it's making an excellent return while also making a difference in a positive way, whatever that means for your value system. Is that a right read of what you're saying, that reward is kind of more broadly defined?
I do think so. I don't know. I don't know that there's enough data that women are like increasingly concessionary capital focused to achieve like an environmental or a social goal, but they care deeply and authentically that there is some alignment there. And I want to see how this is going to unfold over time. But Joan, you know the biggest issue here, it's just the general financial literacy that is going to be the risk.
Mhm.
This education gap, how do we get women comfortable? How do we get them educated at a really early age with money? And we could talk
Mhm.
about that later. I think you want to talk probably about the risks to all of this great generational wealth transfer going to this cohort.
Yeah,
There's real
I
ones, real ones.
exactly. I do. But I first want to talk about the women's kind of redefinition of risk, because as you talk about it more, I like that Schwab study you found on 6 in 10 women, in effect, are saying they're more patient, they have more patient capital, and which kind of makes sense. I mean, women are used to raising kids, and you don't know what the outcome's going to be for 20 years, right? You know that better than I do as a mom yourself. But that's kind of what came up for me is used to being patient in that regard. Um, but like, how do women do you see redefine risk? I mean, is it just PE, ratio, price to earnings ratio? Is it the typical kind of investment things, or is there an overlay of risk? There's like values misalignment is also considered a risk, or like, does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. I don't think that this is the classic like interpretation of how you do think about risk adjusted returns. And we're not talking about sophisticated investors, and there are incredible number
Mm.
of very sophisticated women who are running investment firms, trading portfolios, both, public and non-public. I think it's really when I think about risk and when you look at the data, it's that women are like they make fewer reactive trades. They have an ability to be less sort of ego driven. This is all in sort of women and wealth data, less emotional, ego driven, and can take a much more longer term perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that they just like invest everywhere or give away money everywhere. They're also doing their homework, and they may take longer to really do the analysis. My wealth advisor would likely tell you that. They're not just rushing into things, they're more cautious generally. And that's how I think about embodying risk and how women invest differently. And I've seen it firsthand.
Well, that's perfect. That's kind of what I was getting at. And as you know, I'm reading She Wolves, which you're in, which is very exciting. Paulina Brenn's book, and I'm going to interview her too. She Wolves is about the history of women on Wall Street, and it's laden with what you're talking about, actually, besides the history of it, which is really terrific. Um, you touched on this a bit, but I want to dive a little bit into your findings on family enterprise and wealth management. You mentioned to me when we spoke before that you teach a class at Columbia University Business School or have taught on family enterprise and wealth division. So, how is that how is you talked about how it has evolved a little bit, but where is it now? And like that, you kind of touched on in the beginning of families being the nexus of change agents. What do you mean by that exactly?
So I love to teach the sort of the history on Wall Street of how like the generations have evolved. And I think it's
Mhm.
really important to look at the wealth management industry and think about how wealth advisors have evolved in the context of this family evolution. I remember my dad, Joan, he was, back in the day in the well, I was, a teenager in the 70s. So my father worked on Wall Street. And when he was in the wealth business back then in the 1970s, and I know this because I interned at Bear Stearns when I graduated from high school in 1977 that summer, they were stockbrokers. Like there were bond specialists and stock specialists. And then in the 80s, when the bull market came and everyone started, this giant bull market and everyone started learning about equities, investing in equities, they really became more like wealth managers, like really financial. They focused all on the financial piece. And then I think as the institutions, the fidelities of the world and the vanguards grew, what that was born out of is defined benefit and defined contribution, pension plans changing. So when you had defined contribution and you were suddenly given a 401k by your employer and you had to take it in your own hands to invest, that's how the business evolved even further. It became an institutional of wealth and family. Now I will fast forward. Where we are today, and I teach this and I just think it's fascinating, wealth advisors today are totally different. They have not only should be financial people who manage your wealth, they have to manage your family, how to think about succession, how to think about this generational wealth transfer, how to help the kids navigate this suddenly. And I have some really fun statistics again on the risk side about all this money going to women and Gen Z. Um, and like how to really prepare them. They're also thinking about philanthropy, how to help the family align their values. And honestly, when my mom had some health challenges last year, I called my wealth advisor because I said I need like managed care, I need like an elder care, I need to think about how to do this. So when you think about it, that industry has evolved to like life and family coaches.
Hmm.
And when you think about all this wealth that's, in the world right now, the trillions and trillions of wealth that are in the world, and the 30 to 40 trillion that women are going to run by 2030, this family office organization becomes paramount. Like to have the governance, to have the succession in place, to have everything organized. So, what has happened now as families have made fortunes in the stock market, as they've amassed these family offices, as their daughters are going to Columbia Business School and others getting educated, this money is transferring to them. And this is, I think, going to be a pivotal catalyst for change in the wealth management industry. And I could talk about that, how they're so ill equipped to handle this right now with their advisor cohort, the education, the type of investments, the whole model, and also to the entire philanthropy and how the world is going to look very, very different. So sorry I'm answering these in such a long way, but these are really complicated issues. But I think family offices will be catalysts for climate and environmental change, for change to the entire wealth management industry and how it functions today, and really, all of corporate America, how it functions and changes. Leadership has to change, organizations have to change. We better put our seatbelts on. This is going to be a pretty incredible next 10 to 20 years.
Appreciate that. And that's as you know, and some of my listeners may know because I've written about it and spoken about it. I'm actually writing a book about this, about the great wealth transfer. And not just the phenomenon, which is that between now, a few years ago, really, it's begun, and really about 2050, about close to $124 trillion will be transferred to women, Gen Z, and millennials. And a lot of that, even obviously, there's a lot of women in Gen Z and millennials as well. And not to leave out Gen X, but there's a lot more of Gen Z and millennials. Um, because women live longer, and so the silent generation and baby boomers are going to be passing their wealth on. Some of them are doing it while they're alive because they want to see it in action, and some of them will do it in passing. But what's going to happen is, you raised some interesting data points. What I've seen is by 2040, women will control over 50% of global wealth for the first time in history, which is really kind of extraordinary. And not kind of, it's extremely extraordinary. So, you touched on what kind of an impact it might have really on the wealth industry, but you also touched on how it might also affect leadership. And that's kind of interesting. That's why I was asking you about how women invest in particular. And what I'm finding is that, and tell me if you find this, is that Gen Z and millennials are very much aligned with the way women have historically invested. So let's play this out a little bit. My data shows women tend to invest in protecting nature and addressing climate change, clean energy, women's health,
That's a
women's
big one.
girl rights of women and girls, etc., some disadvantaged communities. So how do you see this playing out? So it's going to ripple through the economy. I mean, just to give you one other thing, I've also had some people tell me that there are also women who are uh, afraid of bucking the system a little bit, and they might not be quite so courageous and change agents. So, how do you see this trickling through? I mean, you have a bird's eye view because you've been dealing with these people that are standing to get the money and the families that are doing that are have been amassing it and going to be passing it on. So, how do you see that? I mean, do you see the families having like internal conflicts over this, or do you see women? Obviously, you're working with high net worth women, so you're seeing that the women who automatically take charge, right? But when you're being put in charge of the family wealth, it's different than your own money. So, how do you see it? Like, extrapolate this image.
Yeah, this is one of the risks to this, Joan, because we know right now that even at the undergraduate level and in education, education is at the root of this. Women have to, and next gens and millennials, more the Gen Z and the women, they have to be prepared to inherit this. And that's one of the biggest issues right now. Financial literacy and preparedness, it's well documented. And you know the statistic on family offices. By the second generation, a significant chunk of this money is gone, and by the third, 90% of it is gone, typically in family.
Wow.
We read about all the famous dynastic families like the Rockefellers and the Morgans. They're very rare. Most families, the money is gone. But I think if dads are sending their daughters to great colleges, and women now are at parity, or they're more of the population, 51%. Women now are almost at parity in business schools. When you and I were earlier in our career, I remember when women were 6% or 10% of MBAs. Women are getting MBAs at unprecedented levels right now. So over time, Joan, I think that as the financial literacy goes up, as the first gen and second gen, gen one and two, the grandfather, the father has more and more confidence in the woman's ability to handle this money, you're going to see more women inheriting, taking over their family offices and you know, being the managers of it. So I think, with that is going to come significant structural change in the wealth management industry and in how women invest. So that's how that's going to play out. But there's a real disconnect right now. The other thing that I've read a lot about is that women, and in particular Gen Z women, they're super uncomfortable with the wealth. They're uncomfortable talking about money. Um, they're not, I guess they call it, they're not emotionally prepared. So you could be fiscally prepared and have like the investment toolkit from your MBA and your experience, but there's all sorts of feelings of guilt and why do I have this? And I'm embarrassed by it. And this is, I want to dig more deeply into data. I don't have it all here, but there's a big disconnect between their ability to take it.
That's really interesting. You said something that really triggered a thought for me. You said that the as the women get more educated on financial issues, that their grandfathers and fathers will feel more confident in their ability to handle it. But how much of that is just up to what the grandfathers and the fathers think? Whether the women might be capable of it, but the men might not think they are for their own reason. I mean, my dad didn't recognize money entirely, right? I mean, I know a lot of men who don't recognize the skills of the women in their lives. Let's put it gently. So, is that an issue of financial literacy, or is that an issue of the men having confidence in the women in their lives?
It's you raise an age-old point. Dad has to give it to me.
I mean,
Um,
that's the thing. I mean, just
it's
look at the
so true.
Murdochs,
It's
right?
so
I mean,
true.
I've
This
been
is
watching
why
a Netflix documentary on the Murdochs, and he was very has been, not was, is very dismissive of Elizabeth and Prudence.
yeah, it's so true. I mean, there are family dynamics that will probably prevent many families from successfully transitioning to the daughter as the, head of the family office. But this is where the wealth industry comes in because they do a lot of training on this. And they really try to help with succession planning. Like some of the things that they recommend that I think is really smart when the kids are really young, young men and women, because we're not male bashing here. Men are
Mhm.
so important in so many ways, and they are half the population. Um, you put them on the foundation board. Most families have personal foundations. You start to groom them. You bring them in the room. You do family meetings. You make sure that they're getting exposure. You make sure that they're going to getting the finest educational experience that they can. And I think for organizations, just to push it a little bit, the reason why I
Mhm.
think the wealth industry is so challenged right now is we still only have 25% of the advisors
Mhm.
out there female. And this is
Mhm.
another huge issue, Joan. You don't want, three guys in a room talking to a father who has three daughters. Those daughters are going to fire that advisor the minute the father passes. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
documented. So we need to shift as a wealth management industry in creating diversity of wealth advisors, not only gender, but race, as this country in particular, diversity, economic diversity. Black women start businesses at faster rates than white women. Now they may be, they're not huge corporations, but their business they're risk takers and they're business owners. And we have to be ready for the potential of this diverse set of wealth creators out there. And when you look at the creator economy and all the Instagram influencers, there is no race or gender different. They're all kinds. That's what gives me like real hope that we're going to have a much more diverse population, not only from inheritance, but in business building, in wealth creation among women and diverse classes.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I also saw an interesting statistic that 45% of uh, wealth advisors are also over 58, and that therefore they'll be aging out or retiring, or frankly, they may not be able to relate to some of the younger people's value systems. I mean, over 58 is a big range, right? So I would think that that might also present an opportunity for more women. I mean, as you and I talked about before, I actually also worked at Bear. And when I was at Bear, they did try to get me to become a broker, by the way. They gave me the Series 7, and I cracked the book and went, yeah, no, my brain doesn't work this way. So I didn't do it. So like me, you just didn't want to do it. But it does open the door for more potential. It says, there's space, right? There's definitely space.
Joan, it's really interesting. In the 80s, 90s, 2000s to 2010s, like those 40-year period, when all the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan were going to do campus recruiting, really big going to campuses, nobody wanted to go in the wealth industry. That, and I don't mean to say and insult anybody, but that was always like the lowest rung. You wanted investment banking, you wanted sales and trading, nobody
Mhm.
wanted wealth. Now, what I hear from the CEOs of these registered investment advisors and wealth, now they're all over the schools recruiting women to go into wealth management. And women want to go into wealth management because think about it, it's a much more friendly work, schedule and pace than an investment banker where you have to work 90,
Investment,
100-hour
investment banking for
weeks.
sure. Yeah.
Even our sales and trading, we have to be in at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're tied to your desk and you can't move. The wealth business is a very female friendly
Mhm.
business. So I think you're going to see if the really smart wealth managers and RIAs want to make a difference, they have to hit the campuses early. They have to get women interns, diverse candidates to be interns, and really start pushing the allure of wealth management. And you're going to get a whole crop of 21-year-olds that are in 20 years when this peak transfer has hit, ready,
Yeah.
ready to manage it.
It's interesting because even when I was at Barron at American Express, I did programs on women and wealth. And even I would do even like little side events. I did some major programs with the firm on how women can manage money, but I also did some like offline, if you will, events, in the conference room after hours downstairs on with some women. I would say, like, how much are you spending on Starbucks every week? And we would take that money, we would calculate what that could be an investment, and they'd be mortified. They're like, oh my God, I'm doing that. And it made a big difference. And sometimes it just takes that kind of awareness of how money works to really help people understand what they need to do to protect their own wealth besides manage everybody else's. And they can use it as an example with some of their clients who may be a bit intransigent or spending on goofy stuff. It brings to mind, what see this money flowing through the economy? Do you see, because if we have, these trillions of dollars suddenly being invested from one way into another way, are these women, do you see them like pulling money out of energy stocks and putting it into clean energy, oil and gas, and putting it into clean energy? Do you see women putting it, I mean, what do you see? You talked a little bit about this conflation of philanthropy and wealth management, But how do you see this money flowing through the economy and society? What kind of difference do you think it might make? Because we can leave it.
Yeah. I think again, the story will unfold. I think it'll have profound impact on the markets and how what people invest in. I'll tell you an example. Like you and I built great wardrobes when we were young. We invested in homes, we invested in art, we invested in jewelry. I mean, this is what when you were even not super wealthy, but as a young person, those were all the status symbols. This generation doesn't care about that. My daughter rents her clothes. Everything is about circular economy, recycling, repurposing, re-renting. I don't know what that's all going to look like. Like the way they invest and the way they live is going to be so different. Um, the one thing that worries me is this digital native, as they call it, Gen Z generation that grew up on the internet. Their dependency on social media to learn makes me very nervous. They
Oh,
all want to
yeah.
invest in crypto. They all think like because they watch the internet that these riskier assets. I think there's some danger in the
Mhm.
transition to this Gen Z too that we have to be extremely mindful of and watch. And then the giant gorilla in the room, I mean, the elephant in the room, rather, the real one that we have to worry is how does AI intersect at all of this?
Yeah.
Because if this Gen Z is not able to get jobs, okay, I'm pushing the envelope really far here, and AI displaces jobs, and we have another crop of students now graduating in May of 2026 from universities with high, high unemployment coupled with all of this inheritance, there's a real danger that we're going to create a lazy, I'm
Mhm.
pushing the envelope here, unemployed, living off their inheritance generation where and again, I'm taking this to an extreme to make a point on your show,
Mhm.
but we have to watch out for this too, because there's a real downside.
Yeah. And let's flip that. No, I'm glad you said that
I
because
think about this, by the way, at night.
no, it's a real risk because, trust fund babies. I mean, I've talked to some of the families that do have this wealth, and a lot of what they talk about amongst themselves, the adults, is how do I raise kids who have money so that they're still motivated? I mean, even Bill and Melinda Gates have talked about this is that they're still motivated to make their own mark. I mean, I would flip it over and say they have an enormous opportunity. These kids will have an enormous opportunity to make an even bigger difference. I mean, I know some of these the wealthy people that fit into this bucket that I know. Of course, it's my network, so it's natural that I would know them. But they're saying, "Hey, I have an opportunity to make a real difference, and I want to make money as well as um, manage the family's wealth." But to me, to them, it gives them an opportunity to build a new model, right? They see it as as a leg up to leverage, not as, some excuse to just go sit on the beach and eat bonbons, right? So it's a very good point, but it goes back to your point about education and the culture of the family and how the family dynamic has played out. Do you also find you've done a lot with women leaders. So a lot of these are women who have this money and are passing it on are women leaders. And a lot of the women who are getting it are women leaders. Do you find that women leaders tend to hire other women more? So do you think that as this wealth transfers or they're building their own new companies that they might hire more women? Or am I just hoping?
I mean, this also has been an issue for decades. I've been in more been on more women's committees. You were talking about all the women in organizations at these firms, all of the board work that has been evolved over time to get more women on boards and to get women in leadership positions. I still think that we have so much more work to do as a society to really see this change. But I do think that more women in leadership will evolve only because of all the dynamic that I just spoke about, the education, and women have to put women in roles. I mean, we have to societally have some changes in childcare and women's ability to be able to work from home and to do all the things they need in those critical, 30s to early 40s years when they're having babies, 25 to 40. But I see real change here. I see it accelerating now. The statistics are getting a little bit better on women who are starting funds, who are getting funding. It's too slow, Joan, but the needle is moving a little bit. I also think that when we see this change, that corporations are going to have to change. Women lead differently.
Hmm.
Like you're going to have more collaborative models of management. No more like I'm the boss, I'm the icon, everybody falls in line. Gen Z doesn't work that way. It's
Hmm.
transparent, it's collaborative. As I alluded to before, and we discussed, it's not just about financial returns, it's sort of about workplace climate. And this isn't being soft and like letting the inmates run the asylum. That was a term my old boss used to use all the time. There's still ultimately a leader and a CEO who needs to be accountable, but I think there's going to be real transparency and a real ability to lead and manage differently that will embrace this Gen Z
Hmm.
ethos. It's a different ethos,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I see that too. I also see it's interesting. I did some stories and some original research actually in the past around, especially during COVID, when we had the convergence of COVID, climate change, and the resurgence of the social justice movements. That Heidrick and Struggles put out, they do a CEO study every year.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest phenomenons that I wrote about, and frankly is part of the impetus for this book, is when the companies, when this happened, companies shifted and in addition to financial acumen and business acumen, they looked for empathy, collaboration, resilience, adaptability, flexibility. And guess what happened? They doubled the number of women that they advanced to the C-suite. Gee, what an interesting coincidence. So I see that happening too. And that's part of where as the economy shifts and and the workforce is coming up and even in now that are maybe in the Gen Z and millennial stage, they want to your point, work in more collaborative, transparent environments. And so those are the people who are next in line to be leaders too, right? And you can't, if you want to keep your, even though there's a risk of job loss, people today want, they feel like they can find a way to make a living. They don't want to work. I mean, there was a generation, forebears, the baby boomers and silent generation was like you worked in whatever you had to work in, and then you retired to be who you really wanted to be. I've never been that way, but this generation is not like that. They're like, no, if I want to take 2 years off to travel the world, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait till I'm 65 or 70 to do it. And so it changes the workplace environment, right? It
Totally.
changes the priorities in the workplace. And so that's got to have an impact when you have more women in leadership and more women with these new employees and new values and they're now in control of the resources, right?
Yes, bingo. And you know
Yeah.
what's so interesting, Joan? I really think I mean, you and I lived through this, many people have lived through COVID and seen the profound impact COVID has had on our world. I think that was the catalyst to change our world forever. Because I
Hmm.
think the ability of people to be as productive or more productive at home, I actually think that there has to be a balance. I think COVID was wonderful for women and moms. I don't think that people should be out of the office 5 days a week at home because I just don't think you can grow as a professional and learn. I feel really strongly about that. But I also don't think that we should be so rigid and hard to lose females right at their reproductive peak years and force them because they have to be in the office 5 days a week. I think if more women are in leadership and we can look at the lessons learned during COVID, 2019,
Hmm.
2021, when productivity actually went up, not down, and allow women to take these 10 years of reproductive time and work more flexibly, and women can do this for women if they really want to. That'll also change the whole picture because that's the biggest obstacle. When I ran JP Morgan's equities and women had babies and left the workforce, it was crushing because
Hmm.
you lost some of your best producers, but I figured out a way there to be flexible with them, to job share. And this was very innovative back in the 90s. And you create a loyal, highly productive, and very contributing employee. Employee is a high contributor. So this is
Hmm.
the stuff that women can change if they are only in more leadership roles.
I love that. Yeah.
I
And it's interesting. One of the things I've noticed is I'm seeing more women on television in various professional jobs when they're pregnant.
Yes, they're not, remember, well, I hid my pregnancies until I was so fat and I was 5 months and then I had to wear maternity clothes. But you didn't tell anyone. I mean, this was a whole different generation. You didn't put pictures of your babies on your desk. You had to be seen as buttoned down, ready to work, almost like I have this family life, but no way will it even get remotely, will it remotely interrupt my work and my productivity?
Yeah,
Like, please let go of that now. Thank
yeah,
goodness.
no, fortunately, I heard somebody say, um, how did they put it? Something like, you always say you value families, you just want to keep us away from them as much. You want to know that we have families, but you keep us away from them a lot, you know. And to an extent that's somewhat still true, but my point is that's not flying anymore.
Nope.
And if they want to, especially for these new generations, and especially for as women take over more leadership and more wealth control, that in addition to investing in things that help society more, they that includes taking care of people and being honest and, as you say, transparent about the realities of life, um, more openly, right? You talked about AI. I want to go back to that for a second because I saw a really interesting statistic. The World Economic Forum reported just recently that women are catching up in AI skills. And you mentioned to me when we spoke before, your daughter works in it, but they're also overexposed in the roles that are most at risk from AI. So they said something like 6 million US workers who would find it hardest to recover from AI job loss. Of those 6 million workers, 86% are women. That's concentrated in clerical and administrative roles, according to
Yes.
World Economic Forum and Brookings Institution. So if women are in leadership more, and we know AI is a tool, it's not the end of begin, it's not everything. So if women are in leadership, how do women leaders that you see manage AI? How do you see AI? And I know it's early and AI is going to evolve and all of that, but how do you see women today looking at AI and thinking about AI, the leaders? I know your daughter works in it, as I said, but how do you see the leaders thinking about it?
Yeah, I'm going to get to the leadership and how leaders think about it, but I also want to make a comment about women being displaced with
Yeah.
AI. I think it's going to require making them aware of the shift to roles where they can use their female power, and I'm
Mhm.
getting somewhere with this, into roles that AI can never replace. I think the role of the wealth manager or the role of the caretaker in an aging society or the role of an advisor, those are things that will never, that human touch will never be replaced. Sales,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, Joan, I've been selling for years in my career. I still work with a wonderful fund that I help her raise money in the health and wellness space. I can't have an AI agent selling. So what I think is going to happen, and women in leadership, I think, need to be aware of this and groom women for this. Women are phenomenal in wealth management roles. They're phenomenal in sales roles. Absolutely phenomenal. Whether it be financial sales or pharmaceutical sales or whatever, women are actually very, very good in these roles. So how do we train this next generation to be very AI resistant to, they'll survive this and get them channeled into roles that exploit and bring out our natural skills and skill sets. And I think as more and more women are in leadership, I think they're going to realize this and put women in these roles because these are great roles for
Mhm.
women and you can't replace it with an AI agent.
Mhm. Relationships, and women are especially skilled at
We're so good
building
at it.
relationships. Yeah, 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 yeah. I love
So I
that.
do
That's
think,
perfect.
listen, these
Yeah.
are really thorny, complicated, evolutionary societal issues that are all going to
Yeah.
play out in the next 10 years. And like, Thomas Friedman used to say, we don't even know in 10 years what the big jobs are going to be because whoever knew there was a creator economy and there were Instagram influencers making $1 million a year. 10 years ago, I wouldn't even know what that is. So we're going to have, a whole cohort of new workers, new jobs. I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I don't know. I think this will all play out in a very interesting and good way.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one other thing and then get some career advice from you for women. But I want to flip it over. So companies, will companies that are selling products and services need to adapt to women now are make or influence 85% of purchasing decisions.
Consumer.
But now we're going to have a lot more control over a lot more wealth and be able to, have even more control over higher ticket items and higher ticket. I'm not just talking about consumer goods. Um, but so how will companies have to adapt to their, I mean, even car ads today are still very machismo oriented, right? They may, even if they have a woman in the driver's seat, it's still a machismo kind of vibe. So how companies are going to have to pivot to adapt when over 50% of global wealth is controlled by women?
Yeah. They have a big problem, Joan. My sister is in brand strategy and marketing and is very, very busy. She was at Edelman and a sub company, a sister company of Edelman Zeno Group. But this is an enormous issue for companies. And an enormous challenge. So, not too dissimilar from finance and sort of the wealth industry and Wall Street generally, who really has to figure out how to handle all of this wealth coming their way that has to be managed, by the way. You really do need a wealth manager. You need a partner. Even me, with all that I don't have a family office, but I have a wealth advisor and he helps me in everything. I mean, you just can't keep track of everything yourself. You need an advisor. Companies have to shift. They have to listen better. They have to do climate surveys. They're doing it now. They actually have to really listen to their consumer. The other thing I know about Gen Z, they can make or break a brand in a minute. Because if
Mm,
they decide, and you see this on Instagram, if they decide like Vital Farm eggs are no good, there'll be 8,000 things on Instagram and suddenly the sales will plunge. So this is a very sort of activist generation, and they're going to speak out when they're not happy. So I think the whole corporate America, whether it's the food companies that are getting killed right now because nobody wants to eat all this processed, terrible food, or clothing, the way it's manufactured,
Mhm.
or, cars and the environmental impact that cars have. This is all going to change. It's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, for sure. I've done a lot on sustainable fashion, and it's really interesting. And there's a lot of high net worth individuals and celebrities who have started wearing outfits repeatedly to make it cool to do that, and use non-fancy brands, I mean, even Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, is known for wearing J. Crew or whatever, right? And talking about it, right? Openly. So, my friend Jolyne, I could talk to you about this stuff for about a week. But to close out, I like to give some career advice to mid-career women. And you're such a superb person to ask this of. So think of a woman who has probably 15 years of experience, has an education, she knows what she's good at, she wants to make money and wants to advance in her career and make a difference and does not feel that there should be a trade-off. So, what advice would you give to her?
I love this question. And all the obvious things I'm not going to say that networking, your Rolodex, clubs, making sure that you're doing all that. I think that is a well-worn path. One of the things that I recommend women do, Joan, is to join boards
Hmm.
as soon as they can. And I'll tell you why. When I was at Barnard, I was very involved as a student in my class. I was reunion chair and, raising money for my class. But it wasn't until I got on the alumni board at Barnard, which led to get on the big board at Barnard when I was 40 years old, that my life fundamentally changed. The
Hmm.
network I was exposed to, the leadership skills I developed sitting around a boardroom and a table. And I tell young women, this isn't about giving $100,000 to your alma mater that you don't have. It's finding boards that will all take women of all ages in either if it's a dog rescue, my daughter's on the board of a dog rescue company, organization. Get on a board and sit around the table and become a change agent in that regard. And as you increase your board work, I've made contacts, relationships. To me, people ask me, that was the single biggest thing that I did to change
Hmm.
the trajectory of my career because you network, you get hands-on experience without being at work with laser eyes on you all the time. And not that
I
many people talk about that.
No, I don't actually, and I'm just trying to think, and I've had 515 episodes, and I don't think anybody's ever mentioned that to me. It's really, and I've been on boards. I'm not right now, mostly because I'm working on my book, and time is time. But it's a really good point, and I'm glad that you said it's not just about. It's not that you have to feel that you have to give money, and the ones that do have a money thing, it's give or get, so you can always raise it from other people. But it's also a way to express your values. I find that a lot of times women come to me and say, "Oh, I have to quit my job because it's not aligned with my value." I'm like, "Hang on, don't quit your job. You can join the board to make a difference in that way too, right? Or you can form one at work, form the Green Club or whatever. So you can use it also as a way to kind of express other parts of you that you might not be expressing at work, right? But I love that. I mean, when I was in New York, I was in Center Women New York. I've been on a Boys and Girls Club and for a homeless organization in LA. And yeah, I mean, it's great. I'm also, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but I'm faculty for a board, a private board training program called Competent Boards, and it's because you have to learn. It's a different kind of skill. I mean, it's a very different skill set. But I love your point about the relationships that come with it and the leadership skills that come with it. Uh, it it it's a really good, it's a really, really good idea. I love that. Thank you, Jolyne. Any other final thoughts before I let you get back to your life?
Nope, except I can't wait to read your book. I know it's going to be fantastic. We need people to think about the changes that will come as a result of this wealth transfer. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. You're a doll. I appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining us today on Electric Ladies Podcast. Jolyne Caruso, my friend. Wonderful. So, how will you look at money and investing differently? What did Jolyne say that resonated with you? Post it to us on LinkedIn at Joan Michelson and send us any questions there as well. Tell us you're a listener of Electric Ladies podcast, and you may win a complimentary 30-minute session with me. I've met some fabulous people that way. And please subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our amazing guests like Jolyne, our articles, and career advice. And you can do that on electricladiespodcast.com. Please remember you are talented, your ambition is a gift. Seize the opportunities that abound even now in this crazy economy at the intersection of innovation, energy, climate, and sustainability. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.